The Pætheon presents What Came Out, The Origins of the Fastbrækers, written and read by the author, Andrew Stewart Bergerson. Based on real events. Hugo and the Big Catch. It was a decatessera of days before Mrs. Lee returned. The sun had barely peeked its head over the horizon. She stood on my stoop. I stood in the doorway. She was properly dressed in simple linen. I was still in my sleeping robe. She smiled at catching me déshabillé. "Good morning, Detective Chu." She still translated rank into her own personal language, like a pet name. I avoided her clear eyes, but not her perfume, like the violets au jardin de Mama. Lee handed me another package. "I brought you the stonefish you ordered." Early morning was a good time for delivering packages with coded messages, but it did nothing for my awkwardness. I fumbled with my robe. "Please excuse my appearance." I had found myself thinking of her more than I should have during the last 2 weeks. I could hardly believe it when Javos told me that the wife of Lee the Fence was a devotee of the fates, a pious believer in the righteousness of law and order. What strength of will does it take to pretend to be the very thing you detest the most in the world? I told myself that it was her fortitude, her principles that I most admired. I almost believed it. I tied my robe tighter against the cool of the morning. She looked discreetly away. "There will be a big catch tonight, my husband says. Catfish and eel." She wasn't talking about fish. Eel referred to fugitive slaves, catfish to organized criminals. "When will the catch come in?" "Tonight, after the 12th gong." "What kind? Fingerlings? Or will there be chuckleheads too?" I came up with these aliases. Fingerlings for the foot soldiers of the Alanis clan, and chuckleheads for their leaders. Both were actual names for catfish of different ages, used on the southern coast of Nod. "Hard to tell," she replied. "Fish school for their own protection, small and big." I was impressed. She had inferred the meaning of my coded language. "Lee won't be there, will he?" "Lao Gong has other business." She referred to her husband as the man I intend to grow old with. I noticed a hint of defiance. She's scared, I realized. If the Mafia found out that her husband was really an undercover detective. "I'm sure that Li Xiansheng knows best." I used the ordinary word for Mr., but with a double meaning. The title, Xiansheng, was reserved for doctors or lawyers or police officers. I was hinting at the fact that I understood the sacrifices she had made, that I knew her secret. I caught only the faintest blush of a smile. "Where will they haul it in?" "Dock 6. "Sailmaker Ying's?" "Watch his door. You'll see." Ying's workshop was filled with large bolts of heavy cloth. I imagined that the Manu planned to sneak on board a junk, sail down the Moat River, and head out into Clear Bay. They may try to reach the Marathi Confederation, or find the lands of Nod, or risk the Forgotten Lands. That's what any fugitive wants, to catch the wind. I wondered what it must be like to live your life as a slave or a serf, a wooden thing whose every move was dictated by a puppet master. How you must yearn to do what you want for once, to become a real boy. A smoldering ache in your bones. Either it grew into a living flame strong enough to empower and escape, or it must consume you in a kind of self-immolation from within. But none of us are free to do what we want, to be whoever we wish to be. There's no place for such fantasies in the real world. I, too, had a job to do. I decided that the only story here was that of Lee the Fence and his courageous wife, risking their lives in the hope that we might someday catch the Alanis clan red-handed. I focused on looking forward to telling that tale someday, once the truth could be told. The tale of Hugo and the big catch. Mrs. Lee lingered. In the early morning light, it almost looked as if her eyes had turned as violet as her perfume. I removed the stingers this time. That's very thoughtful. No one should get hurt eating a meal. No one will. Except the fish. I meant the ones intended for my table. She nodded her acceptance of the fates. I doubted she would ever be truly safe from the Alanis clan if they somehow discovered her role in the sting. She returned to her husband. The natural fibers of her simple clothes blended into the morning glow, fading like a dream. Captain Huang arrived by the time I had finished dressing. Huang Qianfan was his full name. He hailed from the rugged northwest of the Armor Kingdom and had only just been posted to Decision. He came to the inquest from the military, and I had every intention of relying on his combat experience, once he learned why he was there in the first place. Stout and tall, he was the quiet sort, which suited me fine, and Huang enjoyed a good meal. But he was surprised by my invitation to spend our day off together. We both were dressed in civilian attire. He had tucked his hair under his hat and sported a handlebar mustache with a bushy, pointed beard. He greeted me with his fist in his palm, as civilians did. Detective rank. We're off duty, I replied with a wink. Call me Hugo. Qianfan, he replied with a curious smile. We shook hands the way the kindred do, as the seventh gong rang out from the Temple of Fates. He pointed to the bamboo pole that I had over my shoulder. Going fishing? We both are. I handed him a wicker basket of bait. Catfish and eel. He shrugged. Why are we whispering? We don't want to scare the fish away. I grabbed a folded net and shut the door. Qianfan looked at me strangely. But we're nowhere near the river. The fish have been escaping, if you get my meaning. Runaway fish? I pulled him close. Swamp eels. I led him through the quiet streets of Decision. Their plan is to swim down the Moat River, to freedom. And you know where they like to shoal? A big school of Manu will be gathering tonight, I whispered directly in his ear. Dock 6, Sailmaker Ying. Is Ying the Emancipator? Qianfan still thought we were talking about runaway animals. I grew quiet as we approached the east gate. We nodded at the officers on duty. Third-born Hong and old Wu let us pass with a jealous nod, wishing that they too could go fishing. I began my story from the top once we reached the docks. Ying feeds the eels at night and introduces them to the catfish. The eels follow the catfish when they swim downriver. Qianfan looked at me like I was talking gibberish. Think of it as a kind of underland road. The candle lit in Qianfan's eyes. You mean the underland road? From Manu? It's the catfish we're really after. You know who they are? A mischief of rats by the name of Alanis. Qianfan's eyes opened wide. How can we catch them? Think of us as stonefish. We'll stake out a corner of the wharf and sting them if we can. Qianfan began thinking through the tactical situation. How many catfish can we expect? I smiled. Every fingerling and chucklehead in this part of the river. We'll need a bunch more fishermen. I patted his shoulder as we walked down the wharf. A whole company of stonefish are swimming downriver as we speak. It was tricky, running a sting operation with officers we didn't know, but Javos refused to risk that they might be recognized. He trusted in the professionalism of our comrades from the central carceral complex. We'll need more equipment, rods, hooks, nets. Everything we need will be arriving soon. So what should I do? You're the experienced fisherman, Captain. I'll follow your lead. Qianfan nodded again. I've never fished these waters, but I know a thing or two about catfish and eels. They won't escape our nets. We found the warehouse across the wharf from Dock 6. Qianfan and I climbed up to the office on the second floor. From behind a curtained window, the captain kept a close eye on the Sailmaker's door. It was a barn-sized door for large shipments. A smaller door was built into it for human-sized traffic, along with an even smaller peephole. There were no windows in Ying's two-story workshop to let in natural light, only a square doorway on the south side attached to a chute for delivering sails directly to barges or ships. The artisans came and went, conducting their business. Ying had a wariness about him. He kept his doors locked and frequently checked on the foot traffic outside his shop. All morning, Qianfan observed. I recorded everything that happened in my report for the inspector. On the south side of the dock, 2 fishermen set up their skiff within sight of the chute. They're catching catfish too, Qianfan noted to me wryly. A convoy of barges berthed on the north side right next to Ying's. Qianfan laughed. What is it? I approached the window carefully. The emblem of the shipping company, he pointed. It's a stonefish. We watched as watermen with the bearing of justicars removed the tarps. Casks of plum wine from Southern Ward and beer from Nej caused the barges to sit deep in the water. What are they waiting for? Qianfan asked. The harbor master and the inquest. They have to pay a toll before they can unload and pass inspection. I hope those casks are full of weapons, Qianfan said in jest. And wands, I said sincerely. Qianfan laughed at the irony. The Holy Inquest is smuggling arms into Jue Ding to put an end to the black market. The foot traffic on the wharf increased. Now and then, someone walked a little too slowly in front of Ying's shop, acting as if they were on an errand, but taking an extra breath. Most did not dare get too close too soon, or look like they were looking. Another swamp eel, Qianfan noted. I kept count. That makes 7 so far. This one's trying to see if Ying's open for a different kind of business. She'll come back, I replied, once it's dark, and anyway, we're after bigger fish. At midday, the harbor master checked the waybills against the cargo. Third-born Hong and old Wu collected the tolls together with a squad of our officers. The bargemen began unloading into the warehouse beneath us. Then we heard footsteps on the stairs. The man looked every part the henchman for a shipping company. His clothing, weapons, and personal hygiene were the furthest thing from an officer of the law. But he spoke like a justicar. Inspector Javos. Password? Stonefish. Welcome. My name is Rank. This is Captain Huang. He will lead our fishing expedition. We won't let you down, sir. Word spread among the bargemen. All afternoon they unloaded cargo under the supervision of the mates and the watchful eyes of henchmen. What do you make of that, Hugo? The soprano third gong rang after noon. A twitchy sort of figure made his way down the wharf. He looked this way and that, as if he was accompanied by invisible friends, and he chattered his teeth like the 2 suspects already sitting in detention. Our first catfish. But a legitimate customer came to the door, so Ying shooed him off. By the 5th gong, the eel were really circling. One desperate-looking Manu actually tried to enter the shop. When he refused to leave, 2 journeymen grabbed him and removed him by force. There's only one Sailmaker in decision, I reminded Qianfan. If they want to be in the wind by morning, they have to get past his door tonight. It was the first Tuesday in the month of the tree, so the shadows were long by the 6th gong, as the artisans left the shop for the evening. The watermen gathered to taste the fruits of their labors. The sound of sailors' songs arose from the warehouse below us, along with the smell of wine and beer. It was all a ruse. No officer in the inquest would work under the influence. Ying made sure he was alone when he locked the doors and slipped the key under the stone on the dock. He'll find some spot in town, I guessed, far from here, where lots of people can see him. The traps are set, Qianfan noted. Now we wait for the fish to swim in. A harvest moon came out now and then from behind high, night-shining clouds. A cool mist gathered over the river and filled the recesses between the buildings of the harbor. It seemed as if the atmosphere itself was inviting skullduggery. A first fingerling danced through the mist. "Hugo, do you see?" Tiny shapes were scampering around his feet, scores of them. Vermin were common in harbors, darting here and there on little rat missions to complete little rat tasks. But I had never seen so many in one place. "It's like they're coming out of nowhere." The rats seemed to anticipate the movements of the dancer, like they were partners in the same ballet. A rat pulled Ying's key out from under its hiding spot, and the dancer unlocked the door with it. More dancers twirled down the street and into the dark shop, exchanging glances. Their features were hard to make out, as their heads were covered by hats and their bodies with jackets, but their faces seemed unusually furry to me. A wave of vermin followed them inside. "So many!" Qianfan shook his head. "It's disgusting." "It's a threat," I said, our voices now well covered by the mock celebrations below. "Look!" Multiple sets of beady red eyes popped out of the cracks in the workshop walls and at the sailmaker's door, slightly ajar. "They're keeping watch," the captain observed, "for their masters." "They're listening." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "Think of all the secrets they can overhear from within our walls." They came out slowly at first, and always at regular intervals, but more and more. Catfish dancing, eels slithering, each accompanied by a rodent corps de ballet, all making their surreptitious way to the sailmaker's door. For the eels, it was the gate to paradise, their portal to freedom, and the catfish held the keys. "That makes 15 fingerlings, but only 3 of the better-dressed chuckleheads. If we delay any longer," Qianfan argued, "they might get away." "We make any move," I reminded him, "and those rats'll spot us." I thought of Javos, waiting in his office back at Shermer Jail. His reputation, his job, his whole future was on the line. "A bird in the hand, Hugo. There's more than a score of eels in there now. We have 'em dead to rights." "The inspector wants bigger fish. We wait." "What about that one?" Qianfan said a few minutes later. A hat covered his carefully groomed, furry black hair. We call it a fedora in the Kingdom of the Kindred. I got the distinct feeling that he was trying to dress the part of a gangster. In the light of the moon, however, I caught sight of a bulge in the back of his trousers. He even made a whistling sound between his rodent-sized front teeth in time with the music of the river. This curious figure glided through the mist as if dancing through the clouds. His catchy tune had been popular in the lands of Nod during the last age. It drew my thoughts towards home, like he was a Kinnor of Sisi, leading me in a dance. The story went like this. On a night such as this, dark and moonlit, 2 lonely strangers wandered the streets of town, lost in their thoughts. By chance or by the fates, they see each other amid the maze of empty doorways and see in each other their own longing. Could it be the one they've been searching for? Could their lives ever be as romantic as their dreams? The song and the dance and the moonlight worked its magic. I felt certain this debonair man had many friends and even more lovers. I'm so much alone, I realized. I have no idea how I'll even meet a woman, no less fall in love. He does not hesitate. He greets her, invites her to dance. She takes his hand. They spin in the moonlit fog into the night. This charming scoundrel. Instead of capturing criminals, I found myself wondering what it would be like if I lived his way. Taking chances, sharing love, dancing through life. Snap out of it, Rank! Javos emerged from the back of the warehouse. I hated when he did that. It felt like he was checking up on me. A handful of Justicars came up the stairs and took their places next to the windows. Tianfan was nonplussed. Been there the whole time, Inspector? Javos held his own hand behind his back. That's him, Captain. That's Ozanich Alanis. The Sailmaker's door glided open, pushed by hundreds of tiny paws, and the charming figure spun into the dark room beyond. The rats locked it up behind them, but his tune was still in my ear. It's time, Captain. Javos walked down the stairs. We followed. The men still pretended to celebrate, laughing and drinking and gambling, as they took wands from the sleeves of their shirts, swords and crossbows from the casks. They reminded me of food dogs waiting at their master's command. Then I remembered my promise to Mrs. Li. These Justicars were guards from the central carceral complex, the very best of the best. I hoped they were as responsible as they were deadly. Javos took out his wand of binding. Arrest every last one of them. Avoid deadly force, I added, except in your own defense. Tianfan took out his sword. No one remembers a dead rat. We cannot interrogate a corpse, I countered. Fear of the law. Javos spun his wand in his hand like he was feeling the texture of the birch wood. That's what keeps people in line. I moved out of Javos's way. The inquest is respected in decision, but I am not yet feared. That will change when I send the entire Alanis clan up the river. Javos must have prepared this speech. It was good. Officers of the law must always restore order, not just with what you do, but in how you do it. Always remember that, gentlemen. I was thankful that he was encouraging them to follow regulations. They were not just nodding their affirmation to principles they already believed. His words were inspiring them to do better, to be better men than they were. Javos snapped his wand of binding in his hand. Maintain a tight perimeter, Captain Huang. He ascended to the upper floor with his back to us. Not a single fish through your net. Tianfan cast a cautious eye around the corner of the door, and we moved out. Natural sounds replaced the sounds of celebration. The gurgle of water rushing to the sea, the hulls of barges knocking against each other in the moonlight. At first, we heard faint voices coming from behind the Sailmaker's door, muffled by wood walls and bales of flax cloth. Then the Pætheon itself seemed to stop breathing. Each half-company fell into 3 lines as if by instinct. Swords in front, crossbows in the middle, wands at the back. Most carried wands of binding. A few wielded punishment. I armed myself with a wand of redemption. Tianfan gave me a confused look. He seemed natural, standing in front of his men. I felt awkward in front of mine. So I was relieved when Javos drew the curtain from the office window above us and broke the silence. "Chuyi! Attention! This is Inspector Javos." His voice echoed off the stone walls of the harbor and the deep currents of the river. From within the workshop, a scramble of hushed voices and tapping feet panicked in reply. I shifted uneasily from my left to my right foot, which began to complain. All eyes were set on the Sailmaker's door. "Ozanich Alanis." Javos stood at the window, his hands at his back. "You are guilty of crimes against the restoration of order. I arrest you and your clan in the name of the Holy Inquest." Several little rats stuck their heads out from cracks in the warehouse walls, only to rush back in when they saw a full company of Justicars blocking both sides of the wharf. Then 2 eyes peeked out the peephole. They looked mostly human, but they darted back and forth, searching for a way out. Then they disappeared. A rich baritone came out the Sailmaker's door, like a gentle breeze across the inner sea. "Is that you, Inspector? I don't think I've ever had the pleasure." It was robustly masculine, silky smooth, both inviting and exciting at the same time. "Why don't you come down, so we can be properly introduced?" My heart warmed towards the voice right away. I found it charming the way that his words whistled slightly whenever wind passed through his front teeth. I found myself envying Javos, since they would surely be sitting down together soon for a drink, talking until the deep gongs of the Wednesday morning. Maybe find some common ground, in spite of their differences. Javos was unfazed by his charms. "Surrender to your fates, and you will not be harmed." The boss rat changed his tune, but not his mind. He sang his refusal in no uncertain terms, but it seemed directed more to his co-conspirators than to the inspector. After a first headstrong verse about reaching for your dreams, a round of toothy laughter echoed from behind the door. Javos had nothing but disdain for his arrogance. "Fugitive slaves, I know what Ozanich has promised you, but it's a lie, this fantasy of freedom. There is no corner of these mortal fields where the inquest cannot find you." Ozanich kept singing, as if we were the ones destroying his dreams. He sang of larceny, and vice, and anarchy, the siren song of a gangster who enjoys impunity from the law. If he could get away with murder, then could we not trust him with our freedom? I imagined these poor fugitives thinking. Somehow he would find a way. He always did. Javos waved to Qianfan. The captain moved the first row of Justicars into position, right in front of the door. The peephole snapped shut. "They're all liars," Javos warned the slaves further. "Frauds and villains. These rats will sell you out as soon as the fighting begins." Ozanich sang the accusation back at the inspector. "What can you offer in my stead? The chain? The lash? Don't be absurd. I pay the hope they bet on dread. Their dreams you dash. I keep my word." Javos nodded. Qianfan gave the order, and as one, the row of 10 Justicars charged at the door with their shoulders. That was enough for the rats. The delivery window on the south side of the warehouse snapped open, and vermin, large and small, began to pour down the chute, head over tail like scree in a rock slide. Our men in the skiff cast their wads as fast as they could. They bound several to the chute itself, mid-slide, as it were. Still, by sheer volume, some of the escaping criminals were able to tumble past them or jump to the relative safety of the river. The water between the docks began to fill with rats of all sizes, struggling to keep afloat or paddling under the wharf or dock. So our comrades sealed the hatch itself. Now there was no way for anyone to escape. You see, these criminals will save themselves before they help any of you. Help us to capture the Alanis clan, and I will mention your loyalty in my report. Your owners may find mercy in their hearts, and overlook your rank disobedience." Ozanich sang his defiance. It was the story of an underdog, an under-rat, despised for his cleverness, one who also knows when to hide away, who lives to see another day. "There is no escape," the Justicars charged again. "Surrender or die." I looked back up at Javos, thinking of my promise to Mrs. Lee. These poor souls have been misled by a charlatan. They don't deserve to die for giving in to a hopeless dream. The door nearly broke through this time. One more charge and it would fall. "This is your last warning. Lay down your weapons," Javos promised, "and you will not be harmed." Javos was about to give the order when the door unlocked. A hand slipped out. Tianfan pulled his Justicars back to form a semicircle of sharp blades, layered with crossbow bolts, and finally wands. I was not at all prepared for what came out the Sailmaker's door. A slave woman, terrified. With one arm, Ozanich grasped her hair at the root like she was a rabid dog. With the other, he caressed her waist as if she was his dance partner. To my dismay, he showed off real rat paws, complete with sharp rat claws. A fleshy pink rat tail stuck out from the back of his trousers at attention, flicking and rattling. Ozanich had stopped singing. In fact, his whistling teeth were quite close to her neck. 2 sets of tightly placed incisors above and below, as sharp as fangs, yellow with decay. The Justicars all moved an inch closer to striking. "You know your business, Inspector, but you've not thought this through." The chuckleheads and fingerlings began to slip out the door. Each had a terrified slave in tow, each threatening to bite down. They huddled together in front of the Sailmaker's door. "That's stolen property. Return it." "Happy to oblige, Inspector, once you let us go." Javos actually laughed from above. "Why don't you hear what we have to offer?" Ozanich probed. "I do not negotiate with criminals." Ozanich pulled the slave's hair tighter and bared his fangs. "Please," the slave begged, "I'll go back to my mistress, or shoot me. Just don't let him change me into one of them." Then I understood. The reason why she was so terrified, why the Alanis clan took more members out of prison than we locked in. They all had those same red bite marks on their necks, inflamed wounds that never seemed to heal, biting at their souls. I broke ranks and thrust myself in front of Tianfan's sword. "You can't let him, Inspector!" Captain Huang looked at me like I was crazy. "What's wrong with you?" Javos dismissed me. "Ignore the fugitives. The inquest will compensate the owners for any damage to their property. Capture the mobsters." "But they're monsters, Inspector. The curse of lycanthropy, not werewolves, were-rats." Ozanich smiled. "Well done, detective." He displayed his razor-sharp teeth for all to see. "We have to let them go. Not even a fugitive deserves damnation." Javos remained unmoved, his hands behind his back. "Arrest the criminals, Captain." "Eternal damnation," I pleaded, my hands staying Tianfan's sword. Javos sighed. "Execute my orders, Captain Huang, or I will have you arrested." Tianfan wanted to obey, but the Justicars looked scared to get too close to those teeth. You think you've got us beat, but there's a big catch. You still have to capture us. And before you do, Ozanich extended his claws and pushed them into the thin fabric of the slave's threadbare shirt. Many of you will get bitten or scratched. You may not even realize it till the new moon rises. Then the hunger starts. He began to chatter his teeth in a warning. His grip on the woman got tighter. Blasphemy! One of the Justicars shouted. Witchcraft! Another were-rat pulled a slave's hair tight, and he screamed from terror. Our officers all took a step backwards, Qianfan included. Let us go, Inspector, and these poor souls will be returned, unharmed. You have my word. It was a tense moment. The price seemed too high. No one wanted to roll those dice. Let them go, Javos replied from his perch above us, stone-faced. I could hardly believe it. Ozanich wasted no time in leading his mischief of rats through the rows of encircling Justicars, each holding a slave in tow. Walking backwards, they made their way down the wharf to the north, slaves serving as shields. By knife or palm I take my lead, my soul is calm, I face my fates. And if by strife I claim my need, I own the life my deeds create. I was horrified for the slaves, for Javos. If even one of these monsters escapes, the curse will spread. It'll cost Javos his command. It'll be the end of your career, too, Hugo Rank. Still, there was something wondrously chilling about the bravado of this gangster, willing to break any rule, risk anything for his family. He repeated, I own the life my deeds create. Now, Sergeant. A barrage of binding cords shot out from behind the escaping criminals. It seemed to come from every alleyway and window. There was so much of it, and the curses struck with such force, that they knocked the slaves loose from their grip. From the far side of the wharf, I saw Sergeant Kopenik leading an additional squad of officers in an attack. Bind! 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 Qianfan shot Ozanich solidly in the chest with his wand, bowling him over. The other Justicars followed with a volley, knocking more were-rats to the ground. The slaves slipped free and bolted straight into the arms of the Justicars. Our officers bound them, slave and criminal alike. A few slipped out of our grasp, only to be shot by the crossbowmen upstairs. But our officers acted with restraint, I was relieved to see. The bolts struck them in the legs to prevent them from running, not to kill. I was entirely useless, I hate to admit. There had been so many surprises, I stood amid the melee and gawked, overwhelmed by the moans of unrepentant criminals. Finally, when the entire crime scene was secured, I felt the inspector brush past me, surveying the scene, his wand fixed calmly behind his back. You really have to trust me, Detective. Sergeant Kopenik was giving instructions to Hong and Wu. Hands tight, feet loose. We don't want to carry them all the way up to Shammer. Well done, Sergeant. Thank you, Inspector. It was quite the surprise. I stared at Javos in wonder. You planned this? He checked the bonds that held Ozanich. For every contingency, Detective. I followed after him, trying to solve the riddle. You disguised yourself as the harbor master, I inferred from his uniform, collecting the tolls with Hong and Wu and Kopenik. Javos smiled. What criminal would suspect an officer of doing his job? Qianfan congratulated him. A brilliant plan, Inspector. What a big catch! The men were slapping each other on the back. I felt ashamed. The detective was the last to figure out what was really going on. Clever, Inspector. Ozanich tried to sing through the webbing that covered his furry face and mouth. Please accept my applause. We played the game. You won for now. But a rat worth his paws always slips away somehow. Your rat race is over, Javos triumphed. From now on you'll sing a jailbird's tune. Along with their boss, I counted some 2 decatessera of criminals bound for prison. Many were known offenders, like Hassani and Meho. Ozanich is the real prize. I shook my head, dumbfounded. You did it! None of our officers got hurt, and all the suspects are alive. A few got away, Inspector. It was the officers from the skiff. I'm sorry, sir. We'll hunt them down, Chanfan promised. He left in pursuit. One of us now. Javos stood a little taller there, in the midst of the chaos. For the first time since we had arrived in Decision, his habitual air of confidence seemed less asserted, more assured. Take all the men you need, Captain. Sergeant, secure this rabble and book them into detention. Will do, Inspector. Kopenik leaned against the Sailmaker's door. Nabbed the whole clan, we did, all in one go. Not all, Sergeant. Not yet. A whole bunch at any rate. We'll be calling them Fastbrækers by morning. No, Sergeant. We shall not. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Look for the next episode, Hugo and the Ratsnake Soup, and the novel, Detention, Book 1 of the Tales of the Fastbrækers. You can visit thepætheon.com for free maps, glossaries, and more, or support this project at ko-fi.com/thepætheon for access to Discord, hard copies, role-playing adventures, and more. Music created by Gerbob for the Pætheon LLC. The Pætheon and the Tales of the Fastbrækers are registered trademarks of the Pætheon LLC. No part of this story or audio recording may be reproduced or transmitted on any medium for any reason without permission of the Pætheon LLC. Hugo and the Big Catch. What came out September 2025. Copyright 2025. The Pætheon LLC. All rights reserved.